All right, so you continue with the medium's book. I know that João already, you guys already read and commented item 7 on chapter 2, with the very first item in the chapter, the extraordinary and supernatural. We're not going to read it on number 7, but I'm going to comment, especially for those who may not have been here last week, as I was not, because to continue on 8 without talking about 7, I would be lost, and I wouldn't want to be lost. So you can see here in this book that Kardec, like the good teacher that he is, he used a method of putting layer upon layer upon layer, like building blocks for now for our understand. And he started the first chapter with Are Thy Spirits? And he brings very good arguments for the existence of spirits. Now, there are those who will challenge that existence, and there are those who will put spirits in an order of the supernatural, the extraordinary. And in this chapter now, Kardec will challenge this argument. And like in the book, What is Spiritism? Kardec places questions or arguments of those who are on the other side. And the other side means those who do not believe in spiritism, those do not agree with spiritism. And just like in that book, he puts the questions of he puts the arguments of those who do not like spiritism or reject the idea of spiritism, so he can re-argument, so he can put his point of view, so he can put his statements clearly. And that's what he uses in this chapter that we're going to read now. So on item 7 that you guys just read last week, and again, this is chapter 2, the very first beginning, okay? The extraordinary and the supernatural. Kardec places one statement. He says clearly, he states that. He's not arguing, he's not proposing, he says clearly that spirits and their manifestation is present in no cultures, modern and ancient, and it is present in all the holy books of all religions. One may disagree, one may that he makes that statement. He's not proposing that theory. He states that. Okay, agree or doesn't agree, we're gonna have to go and discuss with Kardec. Okay, and based on this statement, he builds up this whole item 7. Okay, and again, using the method of people arguing with him, he says that how could spirits and the manifestation of spirits upon matter be just a theory, be just a human creation of our imagination, if it is present in all cultures, it's present in all the holy books. We know for our science, and that goes direct to the scientists, that there is truth in repetition. A theory becomes a law when it can be repeated in the same situations, and you can consistently get the same results. If you do an experiment and in the same conditions and continue to get the same results, then it's no longer just a theory, it becomes a law, right? And spirits You can call it soul, we can call it anything you want to call it, and their influence upon our lives is omnipresent in all cultures, in all religions. Okay, and he again have the argument that those who challenge spiritism will now ask, okay, this thing of spirits is because humans have always been in love with the extraordinary. And Kardec asks, so what is extraordinary? And the answer would be, is the supernatural. And then Kardec again asks, and what is the supernatural? And then they will answer, anything that is contrary to the laws of nature. Now Kardec came back to them and say, how can we claim to know all the laws of nature? For you to tell me that something is against or it defies the law of nature, you have to know all the laws of nature. And if you don't know that, you cannot make that statement. Okay? And I personally put the question is that Kardec did not ask, that is, what leads us, human beings, to being so much in love with the abstract, with the notion of spirits, the idea that they can participate in our physical life? And it's in all cultures, again, we know that it is in all cultures, okay? Is that our ability to perceive their existence without being able to explain this perception? But Kardec continues, Spiritism as a science, it expands our understanding of the natural laws. And by understanding, or by expanding our understanding of those natural laws, it removes the spirits and the manifestation of the spirits from the supernatural to the natural. Now Spiritism proves that spirits and their manifestation in our lives is a natural phenomenon. It's nothing of extraordinary, it's nothing of supernatural. And it goes later on and it says, on the contrary, resurrection, let's say, which the return to life of a dead body, that would be supernatural. Our science shows that a decaying matter cannot return to life. If that would happen, that would be supernatural, which does not happen. And then Kardec makes two more powerful statements in the same item 7. That's why it's so important that we talk about this item 7 if you don't read it. And these two statements are, one, thought is one of the attributes of the spirit. Again, he's not proposing it, he's making a flat statement. He's saying over here that thoughts, you may disagree, you may not like, and then you take with him. But he's saying to us here, thought is one of the attributes of the spirit. And another important statement that he's making is say, through its physiological, its being the spirit, through its physiological constitution, the spirit is able to act upon matter. It's able to impress our senses, and it's able to transmit its thoughts to us. Again, he's making a statement here, okay? And in reality, those three things is what this book's all about. These three things is what mediumship is all about. Is the ability of the discarnate spirit to act upon matter, physical phenomena, is the ability to impress in our sense, physical and intelligent phenomena, and to transmit with thoughts to us, intelligent phenomena. These three things over here is extremely important because this is this whole book we're going to read now. Okay, there's any question, comments on the item 7? If you're not, going to start reading number 8, please.
You're on mute, Paco.
Okay, I'm mute. I did it. 8. Nevertheless, they will say, you claim that a spirit can lift a table and hold it up in the air without any support. Isn't that a derogation from the law of gravity? Yes, from the law as we have known it. But has nature already spoken her last word? Before the experiments involving the lifting power of certain gases, who would have thought that a heavy object carrying several persons could overcome the power of gravity? Wouldn't that at first have seemed extraordinary or diabolical to a common individual? A century ago, whoever proposed to transmit a telegram to a distance of 1,500 miles and receive a response in only a few minutes would have been considered crazy. And if it had actually occurred, everyone would have believed that such a person had had the devil under his or her orders. Because back then, only the devil was capable of traveling so quickly. Under certain conditions, then, why couldn't an unknown fluid possess a property that offsets the effect of gravity on a table, just as hydrogen offsets the weight of a balloon? We should note in passing that this is only a comparison, not an assimilation, made solely to show by analogy that the lifting of a table is not physically impossible. It was precisely when learned individuals, upon observing such types of phenomena, wanted to proceed by means of assimilation that they were led astray. The phenomenon exists nonetheless, and all the denials in the world cannot make it otherwise, because denial does not constitute proof. For us, there's nothing supernatural about it, and that is all we have to say about it for now.
Thank you, Paco.
Okay.
All right, so this chapter shows why it was so important, or this number 8, I'm sorry. Why is it so important to the promised consoler wait until our science, our physical science, have developed to where it had developed to the 1850s before the spirituals could show up. Because lots of the abstract concepts that is brought in Spiritism now makes more sense with the advancement of our physical sciences. So they would say that the moving of the table, and again, this is Kardec proposes arguments of those are against Spiritism, right? So, and there you propose that levitation, fluctuation of tables, goes against the laws of gravity. And Kardec says, yes, as much as we know of laws of gravity. Are you claiming that you fully understand the laws of gravity? And for that matter, today, this is this law of gravity is one of the greatest challenges in science. Still, we don't understand gravity very well yet. It is still one of the biggest challenges in the physical science. But now we are able to put a bunch of people in the basket of a balloon and make it fluctuate. And science is able to explain it. Now we are able to have a telegram at 15 whatever he says, 15,000 miles at distance, and receive messages in a matter of minutes. And that is 1850s, right? 1860s, I'm sorry.
1860, yeah.
So science can show us the possibility of levitation of objects without anybody being there holding it. So there are energies, there are forces that are able to create levitation of heavy objects. Okay, there's any comments there?
No.
Okay, so continue to read.
Okay. 9.
Sorry, Daniela has a question.
Sure.
Go, Dani.
What I think it's interesting, very interesting in the text is that he says back then that everything that could be not explained was attributed to the devil, right? So like science can't prove, then it must come from the devil. But then people believed in the devil. So what does devil mean? It means everything we can't explain through science, right?
Say that again for me, please.
The way he uses here the example of devil, like
The velocity, right? The velocity that at that time, nothing could travel that fast.
yeah, so like
Only the devil could travel at that velocity. Yes.
yeah, like the example of the telegram or the balloon that could float. People could be passengers flying in the air, defying gravity and things. So he gives some examples of experiences that they were going through at that moment that science would then explain, but if anything could not be explained, and then it was attributed to the devil. So, but what devil means? It means.
Yeah, but important to mention that that belief would be a century ago, right? When he starts saying a century ago. However, proposed to transmit a telegram at a distance of
1,500.
1,500 miles, and the receiver response is only a few minutes, would have been considered crazy. So he's talking about those that are a century ago. At the time of Kardec, that was already known and then was not attributed to the devil any longer.
I know, but if someone said, okay, one day we're going to have internet, it's like they couldn't explain internet, or they couldn't explain a telephone, they couldn't explain a fax or a computer. So I think interesting from the text here that things that they could not understand, that science could not prove, it was attributed to the devil. So my thinking is, what is the devil? Because devil is it's an evil thing, or is something supernatural, is something we cannot explain.
No, the devil to them would necessarily be a bad thing. Okay, so I'm sorry.
The devil would be a bad thing or not?
A bad thing, yes. You would not attribute the devil to anything that is good, unless you're on his side, of course.
Yeah, but people would believe in the devil, which
yes.
in reality, in many cases, were things that they could not explain.
Yes, and that the people of a century ago, everything that they could not explain, basically there was no science basically at that time, used to be attributed, especially in Europe of the Middle Age, would be attributed to the extraordinary. Okay, it would be a miracle, or to be the work of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are some religions even to this day that
Oh,
actually
yes.
things to the devil. So basically, if you can't understand something that it doesn't make sense in your world, the explanation doesn't make sense, and then okay, it's from the devil. But they believe in the devil.
Yes, yes. Just the other day, an educated person, a physician assistant who is working with a bunch of research, doing cardiac research, very smart guy, have come to me and told me that dinosaurs are a product of human imagination.
Mm-hmm.
So there are
Wow.
those dinosaurs out there. But the interesting thing here with Kardec in this, with his arguments and the whole book, What's Spiritism, is that he's actually addressing a more intellectual community. He's actually addressing to those who are able to make the transition and those who are proposing those arguments to Kardec. See, the comment of the devil here is in the reference of people of 100 years before this discussion.
Well, more or less, because the people in his time did not believe in spirits. A lot
Yeah,
of them.
but that's what I'm saying.
He's trying to prove that a spirit is part of the natural law. So he's talking about his own time when people say
Yes,
spirits that don't exist, and then it's maybe from the devil, attributed to the devil.
yes, yes. But the comment about the velocity of the communication, he is saying that people over 100 years ago would attribute such a speed only to the devil, not for the individuals of his time to whom he's arguing right now.
I know, because he wants to prove that the spirits are part of our natural world
Correct.
to the people of his own time, and these people might be attributing that to the devil the same way, right?
Right. It's the same way that if you are arguing now, I could say to you, people of 100 years ago could never imagine that it could open a little box, put some food in there, and in 10 minutes it would be ready. It
Uh-huh.
makes no sense to them. But today, because we are used to the microwave, we don't have a problem with that. So
And
the people of his time did not have a problem with the telegram anymore. But people 100 years before would have a serious problem with that.
Exactly.
And then he says that the denials does not constitute proof. So denying it doesn't mean that
I love that statement.
right?
I think, yeah, I missed to say that. I mean, the fact that you deny something does not mean that it does not exist. And it's the question that, like Divaldo tells us, that he had this friend who keeps asking him to prove the existence of spirits, and one day he got tired of it and says, okay, so now you prove to me that they do not exist.
Yeah.
If I cannot prove to you that they do exist, besides all my arguments, now it's your time. You prove to me that they do not exist.
I like that.
Yeah, I was having a conversation many years ago with a teacher of mine, and she doesn't believe in God. So it was a very brief conversation, and I said, okay, why? Well, because we cannot prove this. And I said, can you prove that love exists? I first asked her, do you love your children? She said, yeah. Can you prove that love exists to me right now, that you love your children? She couldn't answer.
Oh, that's right.
How I'm going, okay, I love, what does it mean? Can you prove it? The feeling, right? So, yeah, I love this kind of conversations.
Yeah, no, me too.
Luis has a question.
Elmo,
Yes.
we know that the codification is the expression of the thoughts of a number of superior spirits. And we also know that Kardec shaped it in an understandable way. He had a contribution on how he shaped it. I read in many parts of Kardec's writing, between the lines, a lot of frustration for the non-acceptance that we know happened when he presented his ideas and his writings to the society of the time. I believe that, in my view, I will ask if you agree, that a lot of things in this part of the Medium book, we can read between the lines that he's actually arguing a frustration against those guys that were fighting his ideas, his revelations. Don't you read that between the line as well in a lot of places in the Medium book, such as those? Hi
Elmo,
there.
you're there? Elmo? We lost Elmo?
He got bored with my long statement.
Okay, so I'll try to answer. I think it must have been very frustrating for Kardec to have
Am I
to
back?
repeat yes, you're back.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Did I bore
If
you
you
to
want to.
that, Elmo?
Oh, absolutely not. That is a great question because I don't read the frustration. I don't see the frustration. Here in this passage and in the What is Spiritism, he brings those questions that were actually being proposed to him. He creates the characters, of the priest, of the scientist, and what is spiritism. But those questions or those arguments of those against spiritism was actually placed to him, and he answers them with his reasonable arguments. But I don't read personally. I don't read the frustration. On the contrary, I think actually there was the expectation of not being able to convince those who are not willing to open their minds. And that's why I think that he has these layers of layered methodology to say, let's first start with other spirits. Because if I was not able to convince you, put up the book away, throw the book away, because there is no meaning to continue this conversation anymore. Now, if you get at least an inkling to continue, maybe there are spirits, he goes to the next layer. Is this thing extraordinary? Is this thing supernatural? If Kardec's able to say, to put in our mind that maybe it's not so supernatural, he continues to put the layers upon layers of the doctrine to us. Did he had frustrations? I'm sure he did, right? That's why I don't discuss spiritualism outside, because I cannot handle, be so frustrated and angry that I'd rather not do it. But I think Kardec was way above that.
Yeah. May I share something? I'd like to.
Yes,
Hello?
please. Yes?
Yeah. I look at this type of presentation as a didactic type. Remember, Kardec was an educator, okay? So he was a teacher. So this is the kind of questioning that, that we call it nowadays discovery approach, in which you start, and last week we said that it was a philosophical approach. It's a way of questioning people to come into a logical answer. So it's a way of teaching, actually, if you look at it, a way of presentation, a
Yes,
philosophical context.
it is a didactic methodology, but
Yes.
it's also in his intellectual group, where he was an intellectual. All those arguments that he places over here against spiritism or contrary to spiritism are arguments, a question that he heard himself, and he put those answers on a book on the Spiritist magazine for everyone who would have those kinds of questions and arguments, which are, in my opinion, good, very good arguments. Those who did not agree with Spiritism, they are not dumb people. They were also intellectuals, and they have very good arguments. And Kardec select those good arguments to counter-argue. But again, that's my impression, that he didn't pass, if he had frustration, he didn't pass them to us.
No, I don't see the frustration either.
João?
Go on.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I thanks Daniela for this, for bringing out that, because denial does not constitute proof. I mean, I forgot to say that's extremely important. The fact that I deny something doesn't mean that the thing does not exist.
Denial doesn't make proof.
Okay? Read some more.
Yeah. Okay. If the fact of the phenomenon is proven, they will say, then we will accept it, and we will even accept the cause you attributed to it. An example, an unknown fluid. But who can prove that spirits are involved? That is, what is extraordinary and supernatural? To me.
Okay, thanks. Okay. So see how he's building the layers? Okay, so maybe now accept the idea that they do exist. And I'll even go along with you and say that what allows the phenomena to happen, and here's being specific, the fluctuation or the levitation of tables. Okay, it's not against the gravity laws, because you don't know gravity laws so well. And I even accept the idea that what allow it to happen is what you call fluids, those unknown fluids. And then is their arguments here. How can you tell that because this happens, because this thing, those tables are able to fluctuate, those tables are able to levitate, it is due to the action of spirits. And that exactly what makes it supernatural. That those fluids, those things that are able to make at the table levitate, is what makes it supernatural. So you see, Kardec already laid another layer over here. So now those who are skeptical already accept, okay, so your argument has been convincing that we don't know the law of gravity so well yet, and now we know that there are forces who are able to make heavy objects to levitate, to fluctuate, in the case of balloons. But in this case, how can you tell me that the spirits are the ones responsible to make those things lift up? That is the point of those actions that people witnessed, people saw those tables fluctuating, people saw those tables give intelligent answers to questions. That's what is supernatural. So we already gained 1 point, I already gained 1 point. People already accept the idea that the tables could fluctuate, could levitate, but not because of spirits. And because it's not of spirits, that's what makes it supernatural. Okay?
Okay. Go on.
Unless anybody has a question, comment. Okay, go on.
Okay. To meet this objection, a full demonstration of the phenomenon would be necessary, which of course would not be plausible here. Besides, it would comprise a redundancy since the phenomenon is emphasized in every other aspect of the teaching. Nevertheless, In order to sum it up in a few words, we will state that the phenomenon is theoretically based upon this principle. Every intelligent effect must have an intelligent cause. In practice, this means that concerning the observation of so-called spirit phenomena having given evidence of an intelligence whose cause could not have originated in matter, that this intelligence did not originate with the observers themselves, a fact that was proven from the experience of self, but had to be independent of them, and that since the being who produced them could not be seen, then this intelligence had to be regarded as an invisible being. Thus, proceeding from one observation to the next, we came to the conclusion that this invisible being, to whom was given the name spirit, was none other than the soul of an individual who used to be alive corporeally, and that death had freed this soul of its coarse, visible envelope, leaving it with only an ethereal one that is invisible in its normal state. And this, then, the extraordinary and supernatural are reduced to a most simple explanation. The existence of these invisible beings having been proven, it was then shown that their action upon matter results from the nature of their fluidic envelope. This action is intelligent, since upon dying, they lose only their body and retain the intelligence that comprises their true essence. This is the key to all the phenomena erroneously regarded as supernatural. Therefore, the existence of spirits does not result from a preconceived theory or a hypothesis dreamed up to explain the facts, but instead it is the result of observation and the natural consequence of the existence of the soul. To deny this cause is to deny the soul and its attributes. Those who think that they can find a more rational solution for such intelligent effects, and especially that they can explain away all the facts, let them do so. Then we can discuss the merits of both sides of the matter.
Okay. Okay, so assume that Kardec gained one point, that people accept the phenomena of the levitation of the tables, or more important here is that the tables are giving answers to questions. Kardec says, in order to really make a proof and a demonstration approval of this phenomena, ideally would perform the phenomena, which is impossible in the case, you cannot see the phenomena in a book, right? Or in a magazine. So we're gonna use a theory. If we cannot do the practice, we're gonna do the theory. And the theory is well known and is undisputed. So it is a fact that every intelligent effect must have an intelligent cause. Since a table does not have intelligence, does not have a brain, does not have a memory apparatus device, nor does a table, and it's providing intelligent answers to questions, there must be an intelligence cause. So something behind provide those answers, not the table, not the chairs themselves. And through their research, to their studies, investigation, observations, they conclude that answers was not being given by any corporeal being present in that room or that place, meaning was not produced by any of the mediums, by any of like spectators that was in that location when that table, when that inanimate object provided intelligent questions. So it has to come from some invisible source. And this Kardec reached that conclusion, again, through investigation, to research, to study, to observations, right? Using a scientific methodology. So he concludes that there is an invisible source providing answers. Call it spirits, call it whatever you want to call it the soul. And then we have to do another question is, so what are those spirits? Let's assume that now I believe that there is indeed an intelligent thing providing intelligent answers to questions, making those tables fluctuate, maybe things by wrapping and giving answers. One tab is A, two tab is B, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth, and so on. He could actually form words and form phrases that only an intelligent thing could produce. So what is this thing? Well, Kardec called it spirits. Some would call it soul, which would be a wrong definition in Spiritism, but could be accepted in other religious studies or doctrines. And through his investigation, through his studies, he concluded that this invisible thing that we're gonna call spirits are the individuals who once lived on earth and left the physical body behind. So if now we are incarnate beings where there's three things in one, physical body, spiritual body, and spiritual with our essence, the ones provide those intelligent answers are the individuals with two things now. The spiritual body and the spirit themselves, the essence, minus the physical body. And then the existence of the spirits is being proved through observation, through studies, to repetition of experiments, but it was experiments again through observation, okay? It's the Spiritism is a science of observation. And it's not a result of preconceived theory. It's not a hypothesis, because now they did the observation, they did the studies using scientific methodology, and conclude the spirits do exist, and the spirits are just we minus a physical body. And he tests his adversary, so to say, whoever have a bad explanation, bring it on and let us argue, let us discuss it, let us put those our arguments and your arguments together to see now which one should prevail, which is the right attitude of any intellectual. It must be the attitude of anyone, any scientist. A scientist must be completely open to say, oh, my experiment is wrong. There is an error over here that I need to correct. It's good that the other side showed it to me. The progress of science can only be achieved through this, and it is achieved through this. So Kardec is saying, if you have any better explanation of how those phenomena are happening, bring it on, let's discuss it. Let's see which one would prevail. And as much as I know, nobody brought any any other arguments to him? Question, comments?
Only a lot of denial, right?
And again, those who completely closed up, Kardec's not going to be bad with them. And on the contrary, this book and all these arguments for those who are interested in, to be open-minded to accept some new paradigms. Those who are completely with their heads on the sand, Kardec is not wasting time with them. All right? Comments, questions? Continue.
Carol, yes.
Just a general question. In the olden days, so to speak, when they had seances and they had regular spirit circles, usually sitters, maybe from 4 to 10 people, would sit, not necessarily listening for messages, but some would be involved like with the table tipping. However, if there was an observer, wouldn't the observer perhaps assume that the group themselves may have been creating the phenomenon based on their group energy? This is just a comment to put out there. Would that be something that perhaps Kardec would have answered?
Yes, and those was on the questions that Kardec proposed in his hypothesis. That in reality, his method was to rule out all of the other possibilities to come to the spirits, right? So to conclude the existence of spirits and spirits being us minus a physical body was basically a conclusion by ruling out all the other possibilities. He needed to rule out all the possible frauds, and there was a lot of frauds going on. There was a lot of people trying to make a buck with the simplicity of people. There was a lot of frauds going on there. Kardec was able to see many of them. He needs to rule out this possibility is that because Kardec was involved with magnetism himself, he was one of the disciples what's the French guy name? I forgot. Mesmer, I'm sorry.
Mesmer.
One of the disciples of Mesmer. He was involved with mesmerism himself before he got into spiritism. So he knew of those so-called human abilities of having this energy that you do not quite understand yet. He needs to rule that out. And he needs to rule basically item by item by item, say, this is not it, this is not that, this is not that, this is not that. Okay, the only thing left here now is spirits. And that was actually one of the big part of his stories. Make sure that whatever was happening there was not caused by the minds of the individuals in that room, individually and collectively.
Thank you, Elmo. Appreciate
Sure.
it. Thank you.
Now the question is, could he actually make it happen? Perhaps he could in some situations. But Kardec has to rule that out and say that in those specific observation of ours, there was no mesmerism going on. There was no magnetism going on. It was the work of spirits. Yes, Luis.
I just want to make sure that the concept I have is correct. As of my studies, that I don't have a reference here now, I understand that the central idea, or the first idea, was that if I have an intelligent behavior, it must come from something intelligent, and that is essential. Then what is performing this intelligent behavior is something he called spirit. But I think, who are those spirits? Are they angels? Are they another part of creation? I understand that the conclusion that spirits are just us after this incarnation and we go on is something that was told by the spirits themselves. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it is actually, when I put a note over here when I was reading, it's a big jump, right? It's a big jump to conclude that those invisible things are spirit. And then he jumps from that to say, and this thing that I call spirits, by the way, is just us minus a physical body. It is a big jump. No, when you're trying to create layer by layer, that was a big chunk of layer right there, right? But yes, the conclusion that he got, that spirits are us without a physical body, is given to the spirits himself, that he had done the work of getting, okay, you're telling me that you are the spirit of one who died some time ago, right? Yeah, so give me your information. Where did you die? How did you die? When did you die? And he went and did the research to localize documentation that, yes, indeed, that spirit who says that her name was Mary, and she said that she died in Paris 60 years ago. He goes and he research and he finds the documentation that says, yeah, indeed, this is person. Mary, all the information are here, cannot be anything else. This cannot be made up. He did that work to come to that conclusion. Again, that is another part of his investigation, thorough investigation. To reach that, again, he had to exclude everything to come to the conclusion. These are spirits, and spirits are we minus a physical body. The spirits gave him informations that he could research, that he could go and gather and be comfortable, be certain that indeed that spirit talking is the one that he's saying that he is. No, it's the same thing here when that spirit in Lilydale said who he was to the Sister Fox. They did the research and they found out that indeed there was that person who died, and all the information that he gave as well. And I think that is the only way that Kardec could come to that conclusion. I can't imagine any other way. Danielle, sorry. Danny?
And, no, she doesn't have a question.
Oh, okay.
Luis, if you read posthumous works, you'll find a lot of that information there of the beginnings of Kardec's research into spiritism.
Yeah. No, you have to think here that Kardec comes as a completely intellectual and skeptical of this whole thing. First, he needs to prove to himself, that he was in the right direction here, and then try to create this whole doctrine, not to create, but to codify this whole doctrine. And being an intellectual, being a scientist, he needs proofs. He needs proofs. He needs to research, and he needs to rule out everything else.
Yeah, they show this in the movie, right? The movie Kardec. They show the beginning, how he worked. It's not really kind of it's the movie. You have always to jump parts of it, otherwise it becomes too long. But they show it a little bit in the movie. Actually, there is a new series in Brazil, guys. You were watching In Busca de Kardec.
What?
Prime Box. Please look and tell us if it's worth. Prime Box, Brazil.
Where's
In Busca
this?
de Kardec. It's
Yeah, but
just started last week, last Saturday.
What streaming service?
Prime Box Brazil.
Prime Box. What is Prime Box?
Yeah, I never heard it before, but look on the internet, you'll find it. Here we cannot find it yet. It's called In Busca de Kardec. It's a French guy that did a series of document. It's an 8-episode documentary of 30 minutes each part. It's a guy, a French guy that did it.
Thanks for
Started
the
in France. Yeah, he starts in France and then he goes to Brazil to research it. I'm very curious to watch it.
Check it out.
Yeah. Okay.
We have time to finish one more?
We should leave it for next week. We're done. Yeah.
Oh, no. Okay.
You need to do 10? 10 is short. If you need
No,
to do it.
I don't need to do anything. We have eternity ahead of us.
Yeah, it's just that we reached 1 hour on this study. Okay.
Anna is asking what is the name of the documentary?
Em Busca de Kardec.
Is it in Portuguese? I'm just curious.
Yes, in Portuguese. Well, the guy speaks in French in the beginning, subtitles, but then he talks a broken Portuguese, but yes.
Okay.
Ask your mother to watch Anna and tell us if she likes it.
I'll check it out and try to record it for you if I can, okay?
Yes.
Hey.
I looked on YouTube. Yes, Anna.
No, just say thank you. Thank you. I'll look it up. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Anyone wants to make the final prayer?
Volunteers.
I can do it.
Okay.
Oh, that's
Carol
okay.
raised her hand.
I will do it. That's good.
Okay. Thanks.
Infinite Creator, good spirits who are with us, we are grateful to be together this evening to receive the teachings and the depths of studies. We are studying the Medium's book, and we know that we are learning a great deal. We start from the very basics to have an understanding of what is a spirit. Do spirits exist? Throughout this book, we'll go into more depth, and we are grateful for the codification of Allan Kardec. We are grateful this evening, especially to our spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, the mentors, the teachers and the guides and protectors, helping us each day to go forward on our journey, to increase our vibration, to increase our mental capacity and understanding, and to have a greater depth and openness of our hearts. We are truly grateful for what we are receiving and that we can study this in a community of like-minded people with open hearts. As we close this meeting tonight, we are grateful for everything we have received. We are grateful that we continue to go forward with greater courage, optimism, and faith and hope. We pray for those who are in need at this time, especially those who are going through difficult situations, who may be suffering a great deal, who need resolution, who need assistance, who need a greater help and healing within. We ask that our guides, protectors, and benefactors assist all of us in the physical world as well as the spiritual world. As we close this meeting now, we humbly ask for safety and protection, prosperity, peace, and understanding, and may we receive the love and light of Christ within our hearts and within our minds. May we go forth with optimism, with courage, and use the teachings that we have received to a greater capacity in serving others. We close now and ask for safety and protection of those on their way. May you be safe. May you return to the studies next week. We humbly ask now to be beacons of light. Go forth now in peace. So be it.